As the wife of a physician, I'll show you appropriate attire, my sister-in-law, Jennifer said, speaking with a condescending tone. To her, someone like me is probably considered a poorly raised woman. My name is Mary. I work as a nurse at a general hospital. I met my husband, James, 5 years ago at this hospital. At that time, James was a resident physician. As I showed concern for his busy schedule, our relationship grew closer, and we started dating. We were both busy, and there were days when we couldn't meet easily, but this year, after dating for 5 years, he proposed to me. You were born into a family physicians, right? I wonder if they will accept me. Today is the day we are going to his parents' house to tell them our engagement. I can't help feeling anxious and becoming a bit timid. You're the person I chose, so have confidence. If anyone says anything, I'll support you, he said, reassuring me with his dependable words. My father-in-law is a practicing physician, and my brother-in-law, Daniel, is an heir to the medical profession. My mother-in-law and my brother-in-law's wife are housewives. Furthermore, James's uncle and aunt are also physicians, a typical physician family. On the other hand, I lost my father at an early age, and I was raised in a single-parent household. I wanted to become independent quickly and help my mother, so I decided to pursue a career as a nurse. I utilized a scholarship program and enrolled in a national university. I am grateful to my mother for raising me, but I worried that there might be a difference in social status. I had heard that his parents were strict, so by the time I arrived at James's house, I was incredibly nervous and tense. Moreover, perhaps because he told them bringing his fiancée, not just the in-laws, my brother-in-law and his wife and other relatives are all there. Each person introduced themselves, and I deeply bowed my head. So, what do you do, Mary? As I nervously broke out in a cold sweat, my mother-in-law asked me a question. I work as a nurse. I met James when he was a resident physician. Despite me speaking, Jennifer chimed in. A nurse? Are you aiming for a wealthy husband? She said it with a slightly mocking tone, and I quickly shook my head. No, not at all. That's not the case. I desperately tried to defend myself. Some nurses aim for resident physicians, you know. But then James's uncle muttered, creating an unsettling atmosphere. And your family? What does your father do? When Jennifer asked me, my voice unintentionally became quieter. My father passed away when I was young. Upon hearing that, Jennifer made a facial expression that seemed to say, I knew it. You mean a single-parent family? There are women who marry physicians just for money. Watching Jennifer sigh dramatically, I was left speechless. James, who was worried about me, raised his voice in a slightly irritated manner. Jennifer, isn't it rude to say that upon our first meeting? Mary doesn't want to burden her mother. She prepared the tuition fees herself and entered a national university. I haven't seen a nurse as dedicated and hardworking as her. Taken aback by his excessive praise, my face unintentionally turned red. Jennifer apologized and smiled, but her eyes didn't reflect the smile. I'm not ashamed of being from a single-parent household, and my marriage to James is, by no means, driven by money. However, I felt pathetic for being unable to retort and nearly started crying. Then, my taciturn father-in-law spoke up. It's amazing that you got into a national university. Our 2 sons weren't particularly smart, you know. Well, we managed somehow by spending money. He said it with a straight face, but I immediately understood it was his way of making a joke. I've heard that both James and my brother-in-law were always at the top of their class since their student days. That's right, both Daniel and I are living off our parents. The conversation between my father-in-law and James eased the tense atmosphere. Speaking of living off parents, Jennifer is the real one doing that. Daniel glanced at Jennifer and spoke coldly. Jennifer is said to have graduated from a prestigious girls' school. It's a school where you can get in even if you're not academically gifted, as long as you pay. Her family is wealthy, and it seems her marriage to Daniel was arranged by their families. Daniel's comment didn't sit well with her. Jennifer glared at him and said, "Don't say rude things if we're talking about family background. I'm superior. Don't compare me to her from a single-parent household." Saying that, she now turned her intense gaze towards me. I had heard from James that my Daniel and Jennifer didn't get along well. He was very tired of Jennifer's snobbish behavior. And for some reason, Jennifer suspected his cheating and was having hysterics, thinking that one of the clinic's receptionists might be his mistress. She doubted him and blamed him for it. The clinic where my father-in-law serves as the director is not that large in scale. Therefore, there should only be around 3 receptionists. Admittedly, all 3 of them are young and attractive, but his brother is not foolish enough to get involved with a staff member. James insists that, when she saw the email exchange with one of the receptionists for work purposes, it seems like she misunderstood and jumped to conclusions. On our first meeting, I never thought I would witness a fight between a couple. As I was cringing, my mother-in-law helps me out. "Stop it. Having an argument is unseemly." Reprimanded by her, Daniel and Jennifer became quiet. Then, they turned their attention to me, as my mother-in-law spoke softly. "Like today, there may be times when you'll hear unpleasant words from those around you. Mary, are you prepared to marry into a family of physicians?" In response to the question posed by my mother-in-law, I nodded firmly. Since being with James, I have often been envied by senior nurses. And James, for dating a nurse, has been teased by his colleagues, but despite that, we didn't give up. Instead, our bond grew stronger. "I can only imagine marrying Mary, so I want you to watch over us," James said, and there was no one who objected. Everyone congratulated us on our marriage. Given our strict parents, I had expected that we wouldn't receive such blessings. However, contrary to my prediction, both my father-in-law and mother-in-law warmly accepted us. The only one was Jennifer, who seemed unsatisfied, and that bothered me. With the greeting after engagement successfully completed anyway, we registered our marriage. Getting married didn't change our relationship with James. The only thing that changed was that Jennifer started inviting us frequently. "Let's go shopping tomorrow. As a physician's wife, I'll show you appropriate attire." Jennifer often used the term physician's wife. It surprised me that she would invite me to go shopping. After initially ridiculing me during our first meeting. However, upon observing her behavior, it seemed like she wanted to establish superiority over me. She would buy clothes that I couldn't afford with my salary and show them off one after another. Today, when we went to the boutique, Jennifer had purchased a large quantity of branded clothing. I was impressed by the amount, thinking that Daniel must be earning a lot. "I've said it before, but why don't you quit your job? It's the wife's duty to support a busy physician husband." We sat down for tea after shopping. I was fed up with it. Jennifer spoke up as, every time we met, she would insist that I become a full-time housewife. "I'm conscious about nutrition, so I've never used ready-made meals. There isn't a speck of dust on the floor. Are you fulfilling your duties as a physician's wife?" Indeed, there are times when we rely on ready-made curry, and there are times when dust accumulates. I've even felt anxious about it, so I asked James at that time if I should quit nursing and become a full-time housewife. And James, with a serious expression, said this to me: I don't want you to quit nursing. Because of the way you work so lively and energetically. I fell for you at first sight. That looking at me, treating the patients kindly more than anyone else, he fell in love with me. He had said that to me before. Remembering James's words, I replied, I have no intention of quitting my job. James understands that too. Upon hearing this, Jennifer snorted. Are you serious? A poorly raised woman like you will surely be easily bored and cheated on. You are smart, but you don't have any merits other than. Jennifer suddenly looked down on me straightforwardly. I couldn't tolerate her belittling my family. I was upset, and I unleashed my thoughts. Well, I guess your only merit is that your family is wealthy. And you're not on good terms with your husband either. Instead of worrying about being cheated on, how about making an effort to trust? I thought I may have gone too far, but it was already too late. Jennifer's face turned red with anger, looking just like a red demon.
How dare you! A woman like you is not suitable for this family.
With those words, Jennifer angrily left. When I told James about the situation, he burst into laughter. You really gave it to that unpleasant sister-in-law. Well, she'll calm down with time. While I regretted what I said, I also thought maybe it was for the best. There were no more invitations for shopping or tea. I was actually happy with that. By the way, Jennifer always acts so high and mighty in every boutique she enters. Is she a regular customer there? Then he said maybe it's because she's a shopping enthusiast. James casually dismissed the question, but I feel concerned a bit. Hi, I have something to ask. I made a phone call to a friend of mine. I thought the next time I would see Jennifer is the New Year Day, several months from now, but next day, I received a message from my mother-in-law that if we could have a dinner gathering. It was an invitation to celebrate my father-in-law's 60th birthday at a high-end sushi restaurant. I wasn't looking forward to meeting Jennifer, but I wanted to celebrate my father-in-law's milestone. I thought she probably already forgot about it, so I was looking forward to the dinner gathering. As I waited in front of the restaurant, Daniel and Jennifer arrived. When she spotted me, she approached me with a stern expression and walked up to me. Why did you come here? Didn't I tell you that you're not suitable for this family? She aggressively confronted me, and Daniel and James hurriedly tried to intervene.
I haven't forgotten what you said. You, a poorly raised, poor person, daring to be so arrogant.
Jennifer was getting more and more worked up.
People like you, who grew up in a single-parent household, are the bottom of society. I would never want to eat with someone from the bottom of society. Just go home now.
Jennifer made a commotion in front of the restaurant, and Daniel held his head in frustration. Then, at that moment, a cold voice echoed. Well then, you should go home. The source of that cold voice was my mother-in-law. She must not have expected that my mother-in-law was watching. Huh? Jennifer muttered softly and turned around. Making a scene in front of a restaurant. It's so embarrassing. Everyone nodded in agreement with her words. I was just responding because Mary said something rude to me. I've been supporting my husband so much. She seemed to have entered a hysterical mode. Once again, her voice grew louder. To begin with, James, it's your fault for bringing such a poorly raised woman with you. You should divorce her even now. What she's saying is completely absurd. Naturally, James looks at her with a bewildered expression. Please, just don't get any more hysterical. But it's your fault in the first place. for belittling my educational background. Finally, a fight breaks out between Daniel and Jennifer. Then, my mother-in-law steps in again. I was planning to ask you about it another day, but if you make this much of a fuss, I'll ask you here. Jennifer, do you have something to hide? At my mother-in-law's words, the voices of their argument abruptly stop. Something to hide? What do you mean? Jennifer tries to appear calm, but her voice trembles slightly. Mary told me about your tendency to waste money. Jennifer's face turns pale in an instant. There's a department store that you often visits, right? One of my friend works there. I couldn't help but wonder how Jennifer could afford to buy so many brand name clothes. Initially, I thought Daniel was very generous-minded. But would he allow his wife, who's not in a good relationship with, to freely indulge in expensive shopping? When I thought about it, it felt odd. I considered the possibility that Jennifer might receive an allowance from her wealthy parents. But she told me proudly that she had never asked her parents for help since marrying Daniel. According to James, Daniel is careless with money, so he leaves all financial matters to her. That's probably why she had the freedom to spend as she pleased. According to my friend, Jennifer is a preferred customer at the store, and sometimes buys thousands of dollars worth of items in a single day. However, her haughty attitude apparently annoys the store staff. And Jennifer, are you using the family card for cash advances? This was a mere speculation without any evidence. But it seems my guess hit the mark, as Jennifer turns even paler. Why would you say that? Due to her extravagant spending habits. I thought she must have taken out loans. You don't even understand the importance of money, and yet, you flaunt it outside. Isn't that embarrassing, as a doctor's wife? Jennifer, who was called out for her wastefulness by my mother-in-law, falls silent without saying a word. I hear you have quite an attitude with the staff as well. We've been receiving complaints, says my father-in-law, who had been listening silently, couldn't hold back any longer. Jennifer would show up at the clinic when her in-laws were away, complaining about the lack of cleanliness, and yelling at the staff. Her attitude was terrible, especially toward the 3 employees who suspected cheating on her. They said she apparently pressures the girls to quit if they flirt with her husband. When my father-in-law heard the reality of the situation, he feared that if the situation continued, employees would quit. Daniel was furious. When he heard that the money was being spent, "Tell me how much you borrowed. Speak up." Jennifer remained silent without offering any apology. Daniel, seeing her attitude, seems to have reached his limit.
A woman like you with such an arrogant attitude, we're getting a divorce. Return all the money you've spent.
Jennifer, who never expected to be handed a divorce, desperately pleads not to get divorced. However, neither my parents-in-law, Daniel, nor James pay any attention to Jennifer's words. Then she looks at me and speaks in a pleading tone. Mary, as someone in the same position as a daughter-in-law, you understand my feelings, right? I can't help but laugh at her remark. You're asking for help from a woman you've looked down upon as a low class? Please rely on your wealthy family instead. With that blunt statement, Jennifer hangs her head dejectedly. And so, Daniel and Jennifer decide to get a divorce. Although Jennifer had filed for divorce, she continued to resist. However, it seems her parents came to take her away, and she was forcibly returned to her family home. The amount of money she had squandered so far exceeded several $10,000, and Jennifer, unable to repay it, pleaded with her parents for help. Although her parents paid off the money, it seems that rumors have spread in the neighborhood about her being a woman who squandered her husband's money. Remarrying with a new man must be difficult for her. Her parents are ashamed to let her go outside, and have strictly instructed her to stay home for a while. Of course, cash and credit cards were confiscated. I heard Jennifer, who used to find stress relief through shopping, is now confined to her room. Despite coming from an affluent family, why she tried to stand above me, I never understood. According to Daniel, Jennifer had a complex about her academic background. After I married James, his relatives were glad he got a smart wife, who graduated from a public university. I guess she didn't like it. Being wealthy doesn't guarantee happiness. I realized that from seeing Jennifer's situation. So, I decided to ask my mother-in-law a question that had been on my mind. Why did you allow our marriage? A woman who married into a family of doctors. I thought family background was important. I timidly asked, and my mother-in-law answered with a smile. Well, actually, I met my husband, who was a resident at the time, and we got married. I was a nurse before I had my children. My mother-in-law, who used to be a nurse, went through a difficult time with strong opposition to her marriage from relatives. She didn't want her sons to go through the same struggles, so she arranged a meeting for her eldest son with a young lady from a good family through a matchmaker. However, her eldest son, who married Jennifer, didn't seem happy at all. In fact, he appeared tired with his married life. That's why she wanted her second son to marry the woman he loved. It seems that from the beginning my mother-in-law approved our marriage. I never expected my second son brought a nurse as his wife. I was surprised. Blood really is thicker than water. My mother-in-law and I laughed together. After that, I started working as a nurse in my father-in-law's clinic. My strength, which didn't yield to Jennifer's sarcastic remarks, pleased my father-in-law, and he hired me. I received a higher salary than before. It brings me great